On June 25th, 2025, inside the Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman, 79-year-old Richard Gerald Jordan, and a Vietnam War veteran and convicted murderer, was finally executed, bringing to an end one of the longest and most complicated death penalty cases in U.S. history. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe to True Crime Teller as we unveil to you the last moments of the war veteran before his execution after spending almost 5 decades on death row. For nearly 5 decades, Jordan lived on death row, watching the world change. From behind prison walls, presidents came and went, technology evolved, and generations grew up, all while his fate hung in legal limbo. His story is one of war, trauma, and tragedy, but also of a senseless act of cold-blooded cruelty that left a family shattered forever. In this video, we'll explore the crime that started it all, the labyrinth of trials and appeals that followed, his final hours, and the last words spoken by the man who became Mississippi's longest-serving death row inmate. It all started in January 1976, when Richard Gerald Jordan, then 29 years old, devised a chilling plan. A decorated Vietnam veteran who had served 3 combat tours as a helicopter gunner, Jordan had seen unimaginable horrors during the war. He returned home a changed man struggling to adjust to civilian life, haunted by memories of combat and battling what would later be diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder. But none of that could justify what he did next. Jordan hatched a ransom plot, one that would destroy an innocent family and ultimately seal his own fate. He began by calling G National Bank in Gulfport, Mississippi, asking to speak with a loan officer. When he learned that a man named Charles Martyr was available, Jordan hung up, found the Martyr family's home address in the telephone directory, and drove there with a plan already in mind. Disguised as an electric company employee, Jordan knocked on the Martyr family's door, claiming he needed to inspect the electrical breakers. 34-year-old Edwina Martyr, a loving wife and mother of 2 young boys, let him in unaware that she was opening the door to a nightmare. Once inside, Jordan kidnapped Edwina at gunpoint, leaving her 3-year-old son asleep in the house, while her older son was still at school. He forced her into his car and drove to a secluded area deep within the DeSoto National Forest in Harrison County. There, in the quiet of the woods, Jordan shot Edwina once in the back of the head, a single, fatal bullet that entered at the base of her skull and exited above her left eye. After killing her, he threw the murder weapon into the Big Biloxi River, where it would later be found by police divers. But Jordan didn't stop there. Attempting to cover up the murder and still profit from it, he called Charles Martyr at the bank later that day. Pretending that Edwina was alive, he demanded $25,000 in ransom for her safe return, instructing Charles to wrap the money in brown paper and leave it on a blue jacket along U.S. Highway 49. When Charles arrived, he found no jacket. Jordan had noticed FBI surveillance and aborted his plan. The next morning, Jordan called again, calm and confident, assuring Charles that his wife was fine and even asking about the children. He gave new instructions. Leave the money along Interstate 10. Charles followed the instructions, desperately hoping to see his wife again. But Edwina was already dead. When Jordan picked up the ransom money, law enforcement was ready. Officers tried to arrest him, but Jordan sped away, leading them on a high-speed chase through Gulfport. At one point, he forced a police vehicle off the road and managed to escape. He later abandoned his car in a shopping center parking lot, hid most of the ransom cash in the woods, and used a small portion to buy new clothes. He called for a taxi, but his escape didn't last long. Police set up roadblocks across the area, and one officer recognized him immediately. Jordan was arrested without resistance. Once in custody, he confessed everything. He cooperated fully, leading investigators to both Edwina's body and the discarded murder weapon. In 1976, Jordan was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death, but his case would not end there. In fact, it was just beginning. Over the next 49 years, his legal battle became one of the most complex death penalty cases in Mississippi's history, involving 4 separate trials and numerous appeals. His first death sentence was overturned when automatic death penalties were ruled unconstitutional. In 1977, he was tried again and sentenced to death again. That sentence, too, was overturned. Jordan's third death sentence met the same fate. Eventually, prosecutors offered him a plea deal, life in prison without parole, if he agreed to waive future appeals. Jordan accepted but later violated the agreement, arguing that under Mississippi law at the time of the crime, a life without parole sentence wasn't legally permissible. In 1998, a court agreed, nullifying the plea deal. Jordan was sentenced to death for the 4th and final time. Throughout his decades of appeals, Jordan's attorneys insisted that his mental state had not been properly considered. They argued that Jordan suffered from severe PTSD after enduring 3 combat tours during the Vietnam War, including the bloody 1968 Tet Offensive near Hue, one of the most violent battles of the conflict. His defense team claimed that if the jury had heard about his mental health struggles, they might have chosen life imprisonment over execution. But the courts disagreed. In early June 2025, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves signed Jordan's death warrant, declaring, "Justice must be served, and in Mississippi, it will be." Jordan's final appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court were denied on June 23rd, clearing the path for his execution. On June 25th, Jordan's last day began early. He woke up around 6 a.m. inside his cell on death row. Throughout the morning, he was allowed visits from family members, attorneys, and spiritual advisors. His loved ones stayed with him until 2 p.m. For his last meal, Jordan requested chicken tenders, French fries, strawberry ice cream, and a root beer float. At 4 p.m., he was moved to an isolation cell to prepare for the execution. 2 hours later, at 6:16 p.m., the lethal injection began. Witnesses reported mild convulsions lasting 3 to 5 minutes before he was pronounced dead at 6:23 p.m. When asked if he had any last words, Jordan spoke calmly. "First of all, I want to thank everyone for the humane way this was done. I want to apologize to the victim's family. I love you all very much. I will see you on the other side, all of you." His statement drew mixed reactions. Some took it as genuine remorse, while others found it cold and sarcastic. Jordan's execution was the third in Mississippi within the last decade, using the state's 3-drug lethal injection protocol, which had long been criticized by human rights advocates as cruel and inhumane. For the martyr family, nearly 5 decades of waiting finally came to an end. Edwina's sons, who were just 13 and 3 years old when their mother was killed, are now 59 and 49. Neither chose to witness Jordan's execution. The older son, Eric Martyr, stated quietly, "We've already lived with the pain our whole lives. Watching him die won't bring her back." And so, on that warm June evening in 2025, Mississippi closed the final chapter of one of its darkest and longest legal sagas. Richard Gerald Jordan, Vietnam veteran, murderer, and the state's longest-serving death row inmate, was gone. But the echoes of his crime and the pain it caused will remain forever etched in Mississippi's history. What do you think about the execution that just took place? Do you believe it was just or not? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up with the next executions.